Yo, what's up? It's Carson, aka If Found, and I'm back again with another video breakdown. Today we're gonna be looking at the RAVE. Set up right at the moment. I just finished moving into a new place, as you might be able to tell from the change in scenery. I'm still working on getting everything set up, so bear with me. Should be by the next video breakdown. We have everything ready to go. Today, like I said, we're gonna be breaking down my one of my singles from last year. It was off my Worth the Crash EP. It's called The Rave. Without further ado, let's jump right into it, and we'll go ahead and just kick it off here with right at the intro.
You got any raves on this weekend?
Large gatherings, things running all night. I don't think they'll go. I think now we're in a position where they can be done.
He's been driven back underground by the police.
Rave, 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 rave.
Alright, so that's what we're working with. Let's go ahead and break right into it. I'm gonna go chronologically, and I'm gonna go top down as well. So we'll start with the drums, and in the intro we don't really have any drums, but kind of leading up until the first build, we do have some drums that kick in. And starting right off here, this is what we have. And then we've also got this kick sample in there. But the main star of the show here are these two breaks. We've got our first break here. And this is just a break beat that I found from some old pack. I've got a bunch of different packs of breaks, so this just happens to be one of those. The processing is super simple, literally just some ST4B to kind of tighten it up, and then a little bit of distortion to fatten it up. So without any processing, and then with it. And I opted to kind of roll a lot of the highs off here because I wanted to feel a little chunkier. Also, bias on the distortion helped kind of make it a little bit choppier instead of kind of accentuating the tails. The second break, we got a classic think break. And here I got a little bit more processing. Reduce ambience. This is built into Ableton, basically an OTT preset, but just kind of chops off a lot of the tails, and for things that are a little bit roomier sounding, kind of deadens them. It's a really good preset to use. So that in combination with the ST4B is really good for tightening up these break loops. So super tight. And then we've got just basically an OTT, nothing crazy going on there. And then a roar for a little bit of fatness. I went ahead and bandpassed this one, so again, leaving plenty of space for the vocals because the vocals are like a dialogue, so it needed to be super, needed to have a lot of space there for the dialogue to shine, so it's easier to understand what's being said, especially on a big set of speakers. So a little bandpass, and then some auto pan just to push things around the head. Kind of going left and right there. And then we've got this little kick, which I believe is actually the main kick for the entire song, or for the first half of the song. The second half has like a techno kick, but for the first half of the trap section, this is the main kick. Main kick is this guy right here. Very clean, very knocky kick, and then just a little bit of a transient to go on top, and then together we've got this. Pretty minimal processing. We've got basically an EQ and some clipping. That's it. Even on the clipping, it was pretty minimal. Yeah, just a really good kick sample. So I don't know where I found it, and I've had it for a few years, but really good kick. A little bit of de-essing This is going to be more important for when the snare comes in later, but essentially around the kind of pain band is what I like to call it, but like 2500 to 3K, just dipping a little bit out there for when that snare hits. We have a tonal snare that comes in later. So what else we got? So a couple little things here, classic samples. One, we've got a bunch of Vengeance samples. Again, I wanted to really pay homage to like that breakbeat era, early dance era, kind of rave scene. And so I try to use a lot of the classic samples that they used back then. And I also tried to stay away from over-processing the sounds, keeping it pretty pure. As you can tell, like some of these, like the Allison Hat, that's just my standard processing, but all these like old Vengeance samples are just straight up. The only thing that's going on top of them for processing is a little bit of analog saturation. And it's just kind of sparkling it up just a tiny bit. It's barely doing anything. And then I've got essentially a clipper just to control the dynamics, but you'll hear it's really, really subtle, just to kind of bump it up a tad bit in volume. So I opted to keep it really simple here. Wanted to retain that classic sound as much as possible. More about sample selection, less about processing. And then we've got the classic Jump Around sample. I don't know where. I think what I did is I went to the song, the Jump Around song. That's where it comes from. I might have found when they sampled it from, but I don't remember where it was. It was like I had to like Google it or something. And I think I did a stem, like an AI vocal stem splitter or whatever, and then brought it out. I'm pretty sure that's where I got it from. I think so. And then I just had to like tune it a little bit, as you can tell. And then a little bit of saturation. But it's literally just loudness to kind of get it a little bit louder. Super simple. Alright, moving on to the vocals. We'll just go ahead and look at most of the vocals for the song right now because as you can tell, they're really simple. It's essentially two types of vocals. We have the counting, R-A-V-E, like rave, and then we have the dialogue. So in the beginning, we've got this dialogue here.
You got any raves on this weekend?
And again, more so about sample selection, not a whole lot of processing here. That's just a reverb tail, a little bit of OTT, some EQ to clean some stuff up.
Weekend?
I got that little dub echo that opens up. That happens in somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So it's the dub echo that comes in.
On this weekend?
And then a little bit of Pro Q to clean up some more. An SSL de-esser, just de-essing. A little bit of saturation, barely doing anything, and then a limiter to cut it off. But that's pretty much it.
Large gatherings, things running all night.
This was again, man, you'll see as like, this is going to be a common thread in this song and also with a lot of my more modern stuff or more recent stuff. The intention is more on, or the focus is more on intent and picking the right samples and the right sounds as opposed to over processing something and like really getting the sound, making anything work. So I spent a lot of time on finding this sample, chopping the sample up in the sections of it that I wanted because there is like, it is different. I kind of like pulled certain sections. I think it's like a long, probably 3-minute segment or sample that I found, and I just chopped out parts that I wanted. So it's being intentional about that, and then not overcooking it with the processing. So that's the first part of the vocal. Second part would be this little rave. This is the counting / rave thing. This also put a lot of time into this, but not really. There is a decent amount of processing, but the processing is super simple. It's pretty standard vocal processing that I do on most stuff, which I'm not going to go too into detail of what everything is in particular doing here, because I am going to be doing like a separate full video on, probably going to be a 20-30 minute video on just vocal mixing, which will break down my thought process and how I mix vocals from completely dry, like just recorded. How I clean them, tune them, process, all that kind of stuff. So I do have a process for that, and I think it's going to be a little bit better if I do a dedicated video there. I'm also going to be doing a dedicated video on mixing and on mastering. That might be one video altogether. But I know I've been promising this for the past few months, but I finally am in a new place now. I'm settled, and now I have some time on my hands to make these videos. So in the next coming months, for basically I'm going to be doing one of those videos per month. So you're going to start seeing those pop up on the Patreon as well. And those will be available for all paid subscribers on the Patreon. Cool. So yeah, like I said, basic workflow though for these vocals is going to be essentially EQ/tone shaping going into compression. So this is tone shaping here. This will be compression, and then we have cleanup or correction work, which will be de-essing. The Pro Q3 is more correction. You'll see it's probably pretty surgical EQ here, not really so much tone shaping. And then usually effects will come after that, and I might do another round of correction or process or like compression after the effects. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And that's essentially the flow for these vocals. Now, what I spent a lot of time on was getting the actual vocal itself right. So this is a combination of my raw vocals recorded, as well as samples that I found on the internet, and AI versions of my vocals and other vocals. So each layer here is like a separate thing.
Rave, 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 rave.
So you can hear how they all have a little bit of texture there, and I kind of wanted this group chant sound, and I wanted the core vocal to feel human. So the core vocal, the main sample, is this one.
Rave, rave.
And all of these kind of help support it.
Rave, rave.
Without them,
rave, rave.
And you can hear how it just kind of falls a little flat. So I didn't have a bunch of people to help me record this. I kind of did this one all on my own, and I just basically did different tones of my voice through AI voice changers and came up with these different tones. So that's essentially how it all happened. It took quite a few passes and tries to get it to work right. It sometimes didn't pick up certain consonants the right way, so it's possible, but kind of a pain. And then here's the counting section.
R-A-V-E, R-A-V-E.
And then we just kind of chop it up there, right? But that's essentially the second part of the vocal. And then the last part would be like these little runs here.
Take me to the...
Kind of froze there for a second.
Me to the...
And these are essentially just a collection of splice loops that I found in different parts. So this is Take Me.
Take me to the...
I think is a splice loop. It might be some random thing I found somewhere. This is definitely a splice loop. This is for sure a splice loop. And I just stretch that out and put it in tones mode, and that's what gives me that weird thing if I take the warp mode off. That's the basic sound, and I just stretch it out like that. And then we have the main stab, and then my rave here.
Rave.
And you can hear how it all kind of ties together. These vocals, I spent a lot of time on, and it was very tricky to get them all to kind of work well and mesh well together. So again, the intention here was not to focus too much on the processing, but more so on the core sound itself and get the sound sounding right. So just spending a lot of time with the AI vocal changer. I probably would have been better off just literally asking my homies to help me record it, but I was adamant about trying it this way. So with supporting vocals as well, these are just random shout samples, little things like that, right? Just to kind of help build this section a little bit more. Cool. That's pretty much it. The vocals, all the vocals throughout. There's only one more thing, so I'm not going to touch back on the vocals again. There's only one more thing. I did sample a JVB or Joey Valence and Bray song. I think 2 songs actually. And I just, Can't Stop Now and Right Now. I just sampled those 2, and I literally just chop phrases out and.
I'm giving it all that I got. This that beat that make you go. I'm giving it all that I got.
I mean, I didn't get them cleared. I just did it. So don't report me because it might get taken off DSPs. But yeah, you can do it. I mean, if you're not a big artist, I'm not a big artist, right? Like, I have a little bit of motion, but not enough to where people are going to be recording. You know, it is what it is. They're really small sections as well. It's not like I stole their entire vocal. I'm just using them as shouts. I had a version that didn't have these in there for fear of like copyright infringement. And also, like, I just, don't like jacking people's stuff like this. But honestly, the energy it brought was just too good. I tried passing it through an AI vocal thing to try and change it up a little bit. I even thought about having a friend record a version. It just didn't hit right. So, and they're kind of like buried in the mix. They're not like. So it's not absolutely necessary. In an older version, I had a separate vocal in here that was like a hype vocal as well. I kept them in ultimately. There's a lot of things you can get away with, and I'll just leave it at that. I kept them in, but that'll do it for the vocals on the Rave. The rest of it is just the talking stuff and the same stuff we looked at. So let's look at the synths, like all the melodics leading up until the drop. You'll see it's very simple. This stuff isn't even being played. I've got this little twang thing, which I've used this in, I think this is actually a carryover from the first song of the EP this is on, which is Noisemaker. I think it's the same sample. I kept a little bit of coherency between those two. Just a cool, like, very textural sound. Kind of more of an effect than anything, but I just left it in the melodic section. We got this guy. This is one of the main sounds of the song, and you're gonna see as we go through that there's very few things going on. It's really like just making sure each individual thing hits right. So with this, I've got essentially 2 RAVE generators. So RAVE generator is basically like a rompler. It's like a sample-based synth that just essentially combines a bunch of the classic like rave stabs that people normally use in samples, or uses like it's like a the samples versions of them, and they just put them into like a synth. I mean, it's essentially just a sample playback machine, but what's cool is they have them so you can tune them and all that kind of stuff. This one I'm using is the hit, and I think I have another layer that comes in for the drop, and that is, I got 3 stacked in here. It would be a hardcore Hoover, a reanimator, and whatever that is. So great plugin. I believe it's free. You can probably find it on a Reddit or a Google search. I've got things kind of more mono. You can see with the no processing how this sounds. So it does help to kind of process these sounds because they're pretty, the samples are the original samples they used. There's no processing going on in the synth. It's just a sample playback thing. So got a fat rack, a little bit of reverb, so room reverb, some EQ to clean it up some more. You'll see these samples have a ton of low end because they're literally just the raw samples. So I clean that up. Fresh air, just to kind of make it shine a bit more. Good old Echo Boy for a little bit of ping pong delay. ST4B to make it a little sharper. Super subtle. Pro Q3 to clean it up even more. Auto filter just to change it. During the build I had to filter up a little bit. Pretty pretty cool. And then bandpass for certain hits and like the drop and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. And then of course the in/power, which this is an old, I have my like if channel, which is loosely based on this. But yeah. And then what else we have? We've got a continuation of that same sample, kind of doing a little build-up thing. And what I'm doing there is doing a beat repeat to chop it. We'll hear it if it do this. So basically turning on beat repeat. So I literally could have just chopped this with my like doing the audio, but I think I was trying different things out, which is why I went with the beat repeat and just left it in. And then doing a good old shifter, frequency shift up for the rise. In this section I have a little bit of a brass stab, or bass stab. Really subtle thing, like you'll hear it just kind of like a little stab. I kept it pretty subdued. Also have this pad that kind of comes in. It's an old pad I made a long time ago. I'm doing this like sample and hold type thing, or random waveform. So I'm basically mapping this to the frequency, and it's just creating random up and downs, like randomly opening the filter essentially, which creates that stepping pattern. There's the regular. Kind of give them some cool like digital-ish movement. Little war horn. And then the other lead that comes in here. Start fading in the real big, like the synth lead that's in the drop, because essentially the drop is made of these two sounds, these classic rave stabs, and then this new synth sound. This rave sound is made, or this synth sound, we'll look at this at the drop actually, because it's just kind of filtering in here. It fully opens up in the drop. Get this little stab. Just a good little remedy synth with a lot of processing on it. Make it a little screechier, a little louder. A little fat rack, EQ, take off all the lows. I just wanted that high screech. Some OTT to make it fat. Glue compressor to send it even more, because why not? You can hear without it. It just kind of grabs that attack and then pushes everything else down, and then pushes. It almost has like a weird pump to it, so it does like a weird transient shaping. These are essentially letting some of the attack in and then compressing the hell out of it and pushing it back up. So that's what's going on there. Sometimes doing those glue compressors even with the same settings in series can create some cool like compression artifacts and stuff like that. So kind of want with that. A little bit of saturation, another round of the glue compression stuff. So you can hear with just this stuff, it just kind of like tucks it, but also gives it a little bit of a little kind of textured attack. Kind of a weird thing, but it just works. Clipping, and then a little bit of reverb, just some room reverb, a little bit of fresh air. So for the high end, I got a dub echo that comes in here or there just to like, you know, do some stuff, some echoes. The kind of room plate or room reverb, just automating here, and you can hear on the top of the hit. That's more dry. Obviously it's got the bandpass filter on as well. But before we get to the drop, let's look at the bass for leading up to the drop. So this is made of two sounds. The second sound, I currently do not have the plugin. I just don't have it right now. So I will be trying to get that back. Essentially like a contact style sample based plugin for electric bass. In my opinion, it's one of the best ones out there. I don't know why it's not working right now, because I do have it, but you know, I'll look at that later. But it's essentially just a regular, like a basic electric bass, and it doesn't completely change the tone of this. It just adds a little bit of organic texture and like finger picking sound to it. That's kind of why I did it. The main sound is this. which is actually just a, like, literally if you look up basic electric bass in Ableton, I'm pretty sure it's this one. I'm pretty sure it's that. Let me look. Yep, that's what it is. So just the basic electric drive bass. I did some processing. So did these settings, and then I think where it really starts to come in is got this acid. Helps a little bit. I think there's an amp on this. I don't know where I'm getting the most of the tone from. Yeah, I mean, it sounds really good, but essentially this is it, not doing anything crazy. It's just the same rack with just some distortion. I've got some EQ to clean some stuff up. Saturn, which is just adding some tape saturation. I've got this crazy Virtual Riot, what's it called? Harsh EQ. It's a dynamic EQ. It's essentially Pro Q3, but he made a Ableton version of it. There's no reason for me to be using it, but I guess I was just playing around with it and left it on. Just dipping out some of those low mids. Infinite bass to add a little bit of fatness. Decent plugin. I definitely could have done it a different way. I was being lazy. Even though I added the fatness, I ended up going back in and taming it back again. So like just a little bit of low end multi-band compression there. I've got a shifter for some rising thing, I think, in the second drop. And that's pretty much it. A little bit of tone shaping at the very end, or cleanup at the very end. So looking at the, oh, here we go, we got this last thing, so a little sub drop. And then it does this little flutter coming back in. That can be achieved with an auto pan. Oh, excuse me. Automating the amount and the rate of the auto pan, and then adding some reverb is essentially what that sound is. But I bounced it, so rendered it to audio. So let's look at the effects leading up until drop 1. You'll see also fairly simple. I still managed to copy all this wobble effect stuff. This is all you've seen this in like 5 other projects I've done. I literally would just copy this group over into things for like a year or two. There's nothing new here. It's the same stuff. The only difference is I just tune to make sure anything tonal is in key. That's it. It's just a collection of really cool risers and stuff that I just liked and used a bunch. It's pretty obnoxious, honestly, because at the end, even though I have all this stuff, it sounds simpler because I'm filtering and frequency shifting it, so it all makes it sound a little more cohesive. Yeah, a little unnecessary in my opinion, but that's that. We've got the Sakura intro. This is keeping in theme with the rest of the EP. The intro to the EP has this like Akira sample. That's literally how the entire EP starts, so I kind of was bringing it back for this part. Quite literally, the first like 2 minutes of the movie, I just ripped it, and then I loop it here. This little ambience, I just kind of loop. And then I do little like beat repeat stuff to kind of get that chopping motion. Again, I could have done it in audio. I was just playing with beat repeat. Got this little haunted thing. I don't know where this sample came from. Pretty cool. It's like textural. But I liked the little texture stuff, which is usually around like that 1 to 3K areas where it feels like tactile. So I just band past that area just to get some of that. I didn't want all the other stuff. I didn't need all that. I just wanted just that texture. So that's what that is. And then we got a little tonal shout.
Weekend?
That was, I think, added later in the production process to bridge the gap between the end of RAVE 2 and the RAVE, so that it kind of had of good continuous feel in the mix. Actually, this was track 2 in the EP, so this was after Noisemaker. Noisemaker is essentially just an intro track. So this was like to help bridge the transition from Noisemaker to this. So when you listen, it feels kind of continuous. And that's pretty much it up until the drop. We got these little samples here and there, but my bad. I need to just do this. Like little effects hits. These are also the same ones used in Noisemaker, so again, kind of bringing some cohesion there. And then we build into the drop. Cool. So let's look at the drop. We'll start with the drums. As you'll see, compared to my old projects, everything's a lot cleaner, a lot simpler. The kick is very simple, as you can tell. Like, I'm barely doing any processing on it. We've got main kick, main snare. The snare itself is somewhere. Oh, there it is. I don't know why I was tripping out on that. This is the snare. Comprised of this main sound, I think is the main snare. Yeah. So splice sample, DS, DHT, drum, snare. Yeah, good sample. And then it's got this layer, kind of like a weird textural thing. And then I am, side chaining another thing to this, so that I'm doing a MIDI send to the shaper box for that. What's going on with this? So I've got a little SPL shaper, sound designer, great plugin, basically just transient shaper. Got the ST4B, of course, just tighten everything up, and then compressed reverb and equalizer. This is just adding a tone to it. Harmonic series. That's why I really like this plugin. I can dial in where the tone is, and then I can right click and I can dial up the harmonics, so it just creates a harmonic series for me, and I don't have to do it manually. Super nice. Also free on the Melodics free plugin bundle, so that's pretty cool. OTT, some EQ, which I think might have another. Nope, just cleaning up. Saturator, and that's this sound. So without the processing. So it's just that click. That's the sample, and then I created this from that. All you really need is a transient, and you can make any tone out of it. You just have to distort it enough and give it enough of a harmonic. So that's what the MEQ is doing. We have another snare layer here. Basically got some noise. You've seen this before. This is my old, my old Vital snare that I made, but I took out the core sound, like the tonal part, since I'm getting that from another snare, and I just left the noise and kind of like the low body. So that's what you're hearing here. Just to kind of, and it's getting sidechained to the main snare, so you'll hear when it hits. There it is. I had it muted for the first hit, but you can see it hits here. So it just kind of rounds out. If I take it out, it's kind of, it's kind of like the snare is kind of whack, and then kind of gives it that low end or the low mids. We have an additional layer that comes in, so I switch up. I have an A/B. This is the A layer. This is the B layer, and this is the second snare. Transient designer. I don't know why it's saying I don't have it. I do. This is using the same Vital, but now I'm using that tonal layer, which is this guy right here. So it's the same exact patch. I just turned it on. I didn't really need to duplicate it like this, but I've also got it turned up. This isn't doing anything. And then you've seen this before. If you don't remember, or if you don't recall seeing this, check one of my older videos. I believe it's the RAVE 2 is where I talked about this snare. I've talked about it in several videos, but I believe RAVE 2 is where I like went in depth on it, because I have gone in depth on this entire rack. And that's it. I mean, for the first drop, at least for the drums, for the main drums. We have techno drums in the second drop, but we'll look at those later. Got these little supporting things. So basically just like swells and little glitch effects, just to kind of give some cool texture, like if I, you know, just kind of cool little ear candy stuff. Really subtle on a big system, you're not going to hear it. And then the rest of the drums, very simple, little trap hat, and then my classic Allison hat. Very, very straightforward. I've got this little weird texture thing that comes in and out. I honestly don't know why I left it in. It feels a little weird, but kind of cool. Kind of distracting also, so, but it's there. Vocals, we don't need to look at those. Looking at the leads, I think this is where this drop shines. So let's look at this. It's essentially just a couple layers of the same sound. Like we've got the same core, or the 2 core layers from earlier. We already looked at the RAVE stack. Let's look at the kind of serum stack we have here. So looking at this guy. So this is our first sound. Ultra RAVE, I have no idea where I found this preset. Maybe it's a Splice download. It's sick. I don't know, it's a sick preset, but has a lot of movement to it, which is fire. And then you'll see, like, I'm just doing group processing on all of these 3, but I spent time finding the right synth sounds first. Good old Tasoki lead. And I'm having that pitch movement is actually not in the patch. It's in the envelope, I think. Looks like it, yeah. So this little pitch movement. So a lot of movement here. If I were to take this out. So that's what gives it all its attitude right there. And that's happening with every layer. Really kind of brings a lot of character to the synth. Pitch bends, man, they're super important. And they don't have to be as drastic as that, right? But just something that gives it a little bit of movement. And then another detuned RAVE synth. But you'll notice, all super simple. Like it's a collection of one saw, maybe a square, and some sine waves. The distortion is probably a distortion, and there's not even a compressor on this. So very basic, very simple. Little bit of distortion here. I've got a tube / tape saturator, boosting the highs a little bit without it. With it. Subtle, it's really just squeezing it a bit and adding some highs. I'm not even using these two, so there's no reason. Got an auto filter just to kind of filter it in on certain sections. Band pass for the top of the drop where it hits here. Or somewhere. I have it hit somewhere. I don't know where. And I'm also, I think an interesting thing here is I wanted these leads to really cut through on a big system. This whole song was made with like big warehouse rave in mind, right? It's supposed to be a banger. And part of that was making sure that whether it's in mono or not, even though most club systems are being played in stereo now, or big systems, is making sure that like it leads really cut through the mix. So one thing with these super saw leads is they tend to get a little too wide on you, and the mids kind of, like the stereo mids, kind of fall short. So just to kind of ensure that, I went, first of all, bass is full mono, and then everything else below or above 500 hertz is narrowed down to 61% of the width. So it's very, very narrow. And you can see that with my oscilloscope here, or not oscilloscope, but goniometer, or whatever it's called. But I take it off. Super wide. It just kind of tightens it up a bit, you know? Like, sometimes too wide is a little too much. It's a little unfocused. This feels very focused and like in your face, which is what I wanted. A little bit of boost on the fundamentals. You'll find that on more of my modern stuff. I'm boosting a lot more, or letting a lot more things kind of live in these mids here. And that's kind of where a lot of the life of the song is, because a lot of your fundamentals for your stuff, whether they're vocals, hardware, you know, synths like this, or just leads in general, they tend to live down there. And if you cut the fundamentals too much, and you're cutting like the base of the sound. So letting that shine. I'll take this off. You can hear instantly how much thinner it is. Now this is a balance, right? Because if I boost too much here, it's gonna make the track really stuffy, really muddy. So since I'm boosting here, I need to make sure I'm not having a whole lot of stuff going on here, like in the bass and stuff like that. So it is a balance. But that's the main sound, is this right here. We got a couple other layers. This guy, just a little nice bell hit. There's barely any processing, some OTT, and a little bit of reverb. Little laser just to add some more stuff, and then a little sustain lead underneath it. And then all together, that's the full stack. And then the rest of the, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the call. I'm sorry, we do actually have a response. I forgot about that. So there's the response bass. Show you here. So more or less the same stabs. This little metal hit, which is similar to the bell layer. RAVE stabs. A little laser stab. This little same thing. Same idea as the sustained thing going underneath it. Pedal note. And then of course that remedy thing that we saw from earlier. But the main star of the show is this FM bass. This is a modification of an excellent patch, and this is a really good patch actually. But their original patch is essentially like the same bass as ISO's Moonspell bass, which is dope, but I, obviously wanted to adapt it to my sound, so I did a little bit of modification, and just kind of made it my own. And then we got a couple more processing things. So just to, push it a little bit more, make it a little bit grittier. Doing that with the noise is bringing a lot of grit to it, especially with the bias. If I take this off, bring it back on, kind of gets it a little bit more textural. The noise injection part is good for that, especially in combination with the bias, as I said earlier. A little bit of room reverb to kind of give it some space. Fuzzy, just distortion, Pro Q3 to clean some stuff up. This particular sound had a lot of like throatiness, so like 600-700 was good to kind of tame a bit, to show you that. And now it's like too close to my head, it's almost like right in my ears, and so to back it off a bit, just 700. Also with vocals, that's a good area to look at. If it feels like you have a lot of proximity issues, or like it sounds like the singer just sang it way too close to the mic, first of all, tell them to back up. Second of all, dip around 600 to 800. It'll make it feel like they sang back further from the mic. And then you got to fix the proximity pops and all that, but that's another video. Let's see, room reverb, that's just at the end of the drop, just to kind of get a little bit of a reverb tail. I've got, it is being sidechained to something, the robot voice, so like the counting voice that happens like here, for instance.
B E.
I'm just side chaining that. That bass is very talky, like it's has a lot of vocal textures or tones to it. Like it sounds like a kind of talking bass a little bit. So occupying the same space as that vocal, dip it a little bit to make room for the vocal. That's it. I mean, it's just the call and response between those two sections, really. Oh, look at this fill real quick. This feels pretty interesting. So some lead sound, saw taboo. I don't know, but what the cool sound that you're hearing, the like flutter, is the auto pant. I mean, it sounds pretty cool on its own, but I was just kind of accentuating that flutter with this guy. Just get a little bit of tremolo. Some dip on the low mids. And then, let's see. Yeah, let's look at the bass for the drop. And the effects, as you can tell, is pretty minimal, but we'll look at it. So looking at the bass, we've got this first hit at the top of the drop. Pretty subtle. This is an old patch of mine, I believe. Yeah, this is like one from my first. I'm pretty sure this is from my first preset pack I ever made, 2021. It's an old one. Great sound though, still works really well. And I just kind of EQ'd a little bit differently than I used to, bringing out a lot of those lows and like mids to make it a little bit more like throaty, have a little more meat to it. Glue compressor to kind of give it some weird, a little more attack, kind of tuck it a bit as well. And that's it for that sound. And then just clipping it, really simple. The actual bass or sub. So there's a couple cool things going on here. I wanted this. There's a lot going on in the leads but it's simple, but there is a lot going on. Like it's kind of chaotic. So I wanted the bass to be like not have too much movement, but for this first hit, instead of doing a crazy fill, I was like, let me just do a crazy bass fill, like a sub movement. I feel like I wanted this to feel more experiential. So like when people were hearing this at a big show, it kind of really hits them in the chest. So we got this first hit. This is the main sub as well. It is a serum. So just in basic, basically alternating between two wavetables. One has more harmonics, and then the other has basically just a third with the fundamental. And I think it starts out with this one, and then it goes to this one halfway through. You'll hear how, yeah. So now we're playing from this wavetable with that higher harmonic in there. Kind of like a call and response to the sub, pretty cool. But the first movement, all of it's done through pitch bends. So go into here, MIDI control, and you can see the pitch bend there. And then what's cool is I did that kind of that triplet roll. It's not a triplet roll, but 16th to 30. It's a 30-second roll, I think. And then I'm doing the pitch up with it, so it feels like it's swooping up into itself. Kind of cool. Also got this sub here. And that's just kind of doing a weird, like, I'm trying to think it was just like a rant. I was like, you know what, it'd be kind of cool if like the sub felt like it was like talking almost, but not like you could hear it talking, almost like you could feel it talking. So I thought of like the sub movement that I would do to emulate like a groan or something. And this is kind of what I came up with. And again, super simple. It's literally just a sine wave, I think, with some distortion maybe. And I just have, it's all pitch movement. And I just dialed this in. I basically just played with it like this for like, 10, 30 minutes, whatever, until it's kind of cool. So that's that. I mean, that's pretty much the bass. I've got this other response sub here. And this is essentially the same as this, but it just has a little bit more attack to it. So it's a very basic sub, just with a basic sine wave, but now I have a pitch. Oh, maybe I don't. Why don't? Oh, I'm doing it in the MIDI. So, same thing. Instead of, I don't know why I didn't do it with the pitch envelope. I think it's because I alternate how much pitch envelope is going on, which I don't know why. I think it just thought it sounded cool. So I decided to just hand draw it in. So the pitch mod that you would get normally, like when you did do a pitch envelope, I just drew it in. That's it. Yeah. So one way to do it, but it worked. And then we got another little pitch down here. That's pretty much it. And then effects for the drop, we've got this little guy here. I'm automating the rate on the auto pan to create some like fluttery stuff. Just background elements to give it a little bit more atmosphere. And then that wobble effects, basically just risers coming back in. And the last thing I'll say is I have this cool little ring out on the snare. And that is just this guy, I believe. And I'm just automating the plate reverb, which is just a vintage verb with some kind of like OTT style compression, but not as heavy after to let it ring out. Kind of a cool little tail to ease you back into the
way to destroying what was a very peaceful youth culture. We were telling you about gigantic albums.
Alright, so let's look at the drums leading up until the techno drop, basically all on the break in the build. We start out with the new break here. Alright, so we still got the think break, of course. I think, it is still bandpassed, I'm pretty sure, but I open it up a little bit if I remember correctly. No, it's the same bandpass, but I bring in a new break, so something a little bit more driving, a little bit more punchy.
Sometimes they
barely
ended
any processing
confrontations with the police after residents complained of deafening music. And
bring in a clap here to kind of heighten the tension a bit.
Too quiet.
This, again, in accordance with sticking to like classic sounds and everything, this is literally just a 909 kit with no processing on it. Well, that's a lie. It's a 909 kit with a bit of OTT, tiny bit, no OTT, actually one OTT, sorry. A little bit of OTT, barely any EQ, and some ST4B to kind of tighten up the highs a bit for those 909 hats. That's it. Yeah, that's all that's really going on with the 909s. This 909 kit is built into Ableton. They have an excellent standard default 909. Great for tech house or techno, just really good stock sounds. The classic 909 hat. And you'll hear, take it out, take out the processing. No processing. It's essentially just quieter, but it sounds the same. Maybe a tiny bit more attack on those highs. Just super classic sounding, didn't want to mess it up, so I kept it pretty simple. And then we've got a couple kicks that come in, just to kind of give it a little bit of movement. And then bring in the snare build, classic 909 snare. And then building up here. All right, so here we've got the same break as in that's in the the section before it in the build and everything, that green room break. But then I just added a room reverb, really tight. 40% wet, and then some distortion after, and then band past it, so it kind of feels like a trash mic is what they call it for live band stuff, but it feels like a trash mic essentially is on the drums now versus. So that's a cool little filter technique to kind of create some more contrast in your drums. And then leading up to teasing the techno drop. But before we look at the drop, let's look at everything else leading up to the drop. Vocals, we already talked about, not going to go back into them. Looking at the melodics, Same horn from earlier, another one as well, and another one here. Again, same exact setup as we had earlier, as you can tell here, same. We just duplicate it once more because we have an extended build. And this time I'm not, oh no, it is the same, it's the same. So there's some cool, like, weird sounds, I don't know. And we have the techno lead. So this is the lead for the second drop, which is, I believe, an acid sound. Now, there's a ton of processing on this, but the sound itself is really simple. I think this is it. Yeah, so there's a very simple acid sound. I think the original preset, I'm pretty sure, was just this. And then I added this as like a side layer. And then did some more editing, added like, you know, the different macros and stuff to give me some more movement, which ended up helping it open up throughout the drop. But we'll look at all the processing for that during the drop. So the only other thing we have leading up to the drop is the bass. Same bass as before, just brought it back. We do a little octave jump here. And then as part of the build, we repeat it. And then do a shifter up. That's what's creating that pitch riser. And then also are kind of washing it out with some reverb. Little pitch down here. And then a pitch back up. And then a little sweep. It's an additional kind of sub riser. Cool little effect. That's not even being played. And then the effects leading up, same wobble effects, nothing different, basically the same as the first drop. And then the same effects overall. The only additional thing is this second riser pack. Basically a distorted version of, what is this actually? Hold up. I have effect track. Oh, it's a distorted version of my If Found riser, which I think I've already shared on Patreon. I hadn't made the rack at the time yet, but this is essentially the rack, but it's like a more distorted version with the fuzz of me and the OTT and everything. It's just a pitch riser. It literally just goes up as a pure tone riser. Looking at the way I'm doing that, I'm pretty sure it's through MIDI. And then I think it also rises, I think I also do a shifter later. Yeah, it's like an extended riser at the back half of the techno drop. That's pretty much that. So let's look at the drop. So it's just going to drop 2 where we have the techno drop. So 2 main things in this drop, everything else is pretty much just support. Is essentially the drums, techno drums, which is basically a 909 hat and it kicks, and the big techno kick. Look at the techno kick, which is down here maybe. There it is. So we've got the rumble. And then the actual kick itself. So let's look at just the actual kick. We got a couple layers here. A sampled ISO kick from, I have no idea what track, but I liked the attack to it. So that's the first thing. And then we've got this AT Solar kick, kind of like a techno style kick. With just that. Kind of dull. That adds a little bit of something to it. It took me a long time to get this kick right. I went through, as you can tell, a lot of different styles of kicks, and this was actually the like second rack I built for trying out different kicks. So it was a pain to get this kick right, but we finally did it. The processing, as you can tell, is pretty minimal once just getting the right samples. The kick itself, I had a little bit of drum bus on it, and then some EQ. But without it, tighten it up just a little bit. And then this is all kind of side or automation stuff, you know, like little high pass sweep, stuff like that. So that's the main part of the kick. The second part is going to be the rumble. And as you can see here, I have an, where is it? Somewhere. External instrument. This is feeding back into the drop drums, and it is, I believe, should be, it is being side, so the rumble is being side chained to that main kick with a shaper box, being MIDI triggered from that external instrument. So this is the rumble sound. Here it has a little bit of a transient there. That transient's getting knocked out here, so to allow for this. You can hear with the tail of that kick, timing the length of the rumble with the length of that kick and getting it all working out just took a little bit of tweaking to get it just right. A nice little hack for this is actually, if I were to go into here, I'm not doing it in this case, but I can show you. So this is MIDI triggered to this kick external instrument right here. So that's just sending a MIDI trigger to this shaper box to know when to trigger the sidechain, right? But if I want to be able to see the actual waveform I'm sidechaining to, I can do that as well. So I look up drop drums, and it's going to be a bit of a mess because I got to route to it, but it's coming, the waveform is coming from the mix out of this kick channel. So we go here, go to kick, and I'm going to go to post mixer. So it's going to be after this section. This is the mixer for the kick. And now that's going to be tapped into here. So I can see the yellow part right here, the bright yellow or the brighter yellow is the sidechain kick. It's the kick signal being read into this oscilloscope. And the darker yellow is the actual rumble. It's the actual rumble that this shaper box channel is on. So basically what I'm doing is ducking the rumble underneath the kick that I'm sidechaining to, and I can see where the tail starts to let up, so I can start to fade in the rumble. Does that make sense? I feel like that, yeah. So I can start to fade in the rumble. And it's just kind of a feeling thing. So you can kind of scientifically, if I wanted to be perfect, I could like technically give a little bit more room so there's no bow tying, no crossover here between the frequencies, because right now there kind of is. But I also made sure they were in phase, so you can see how this goes up and the gray signal also goes up. So these are kind of in phase with each other. So even though there's some overlap, they're overlapping in phase, so it works out. So they're not doing any cancellation stuff. You can hear how they're hitting pretty consistently in phase. And that's really just playing around with timing and everything. Getting the what's it called, the tune of this, the transposition and the transposition of the kick right as well. I think I did some modification on the yeah, so I tuned this kick down 5 semitones. Every time you tune it down, you're going to be changing the phase of when the kick's hitting. So just playing around with that and reading it through the meter until it sounds right, looks right, hits right. And then the rest of the drums are right here for the techno part. Basically like that 909 hat, which in this case I think it's 2 hats. Oh, just 1 hit hat. And then I have another 909 hat that comes in layers here. To be honest, you can hear the phasing. It's a little too much. I probably shouldn't have layered them like that, but it kind of worked. One way I'm getting this first hat to sound really fat, Decapitator is great for this. Drum fattener, but then I like to change it up a little bit and make sure the high cuts all the way up, and then tone the drive down a bit. I think the original preset's a little too much, so that's pretty much it. So that'll do it for the drums. I have some snares that come in here. Kind of lead you out as like a mix out. But yeah, like I said, second big element here for this techno drop would be the acid lead. So I've got, here's the main sound here, and then I've got like this, just kind of an additional acid layer to make it wider. Doing this change thing, so basically pulse width modulation, automating how much of that is happening to create the more squelchy acid tone. I've also got this widen thing, which is going to the wet of, oh, it's actually not even being used. It would be going to the hyper dimension, but it's turned off. I've got this guy, which is just modding like the pulse width modulation as well as the wavetable position to get even more change, and you can see how that changes. Basically, it just kind of gives me more automation or evolution of the sound throughout the drop. We have some kind of changes in this section, and then we have another macro that does even more changes, so it continues to evolve throughout. And in this one, I'm doing kind of some volume automation on A, some filter cutoff on this guy here, and then flanger is the main thing, I think, on this filter. So just kind of opening it up a bit here as well. But yeah, so that's the sound. I think, again, I believe I have my own patch that I put out on Patreon. It's called the IFF Acid 1, and it's pretty similar to this patch. It's because this is a patch that I built from another patch, and this is like a unique one. And I think I kept all the macros here, or kept them similar. So look at my Patreon. It's, I believe it was last month, the month before. It'll be in the Ableton Rack and preset pack. And it'll work for Serum 2 as well. Yep, and the only other stuff is this little stabs here and there. Pretty much it. I've got these little stabs, a little screech, just to kind of like keep it going. It's pretty tucked in the back, but it gives a little bit more atmosphere to everything going on, right? And that'll pretty much do it. We just kind of ride that out to the end. And that'll do it for the rave. Again, I apologize for the kind of chop setup or recording setup that I have right now. That should be fixed by the next video. If you are watching on YouTube, you are most likely watching the short version of this video. To check out the full video, where you're gonna have the second drop breakdown, where I go into the techno kick, techno rumble, and how I designed all that. Make sure to check that out. It'll be over on my Patreon. Also, that'll be available to my creator and artist tier members. And for artist tier members, which is the highest tier membership, you will also have access to this entire project file. All the synths, samples, everything as you see it right now, you'll have access to. So do with that as you please. I am going to be doing a separate mixing and mastering video where I kind of do case studies and break more into like the whole purpose of mixing and mastering, how I approach it and all that. So it'll be its own dedicated video, which will be coming up very soon. Like I said, now I have some time to actually make these videos, so they will be coming up in the next month or two as I start rolling them out. For anyone who's watching from Patreon, thank you guys so much for continuing to subscribe. It really does help, and I really appreciate it. So that'll do it for me. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.